Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. On behalf of the National Transit Institute, I welcome you and thank you for participating. The National Transit Institute develops, promotes, and delivers training and education programs for the public transit industry in the United States. Today's webinar is National Transit Database 2019 Report Year Changes. We are pleased to have as our presenters today Dan Barnes and Kyle Fritz. Kyle Fritz joined the NTD program in 2011 and currently serves as a senior validation analyst. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Financial Information and Analysis from Clarkson University. Dan Barnes joined the NTD team in 2012. He is also a graduate of Clarkson University and currently works as a senior validation analyst for the urban reporting module of the National Transit Database. During today's presentation, you can ask questions at any time by typing it in the Q&A box. If you currently do not see the Q&A box, you should look at the little menu bar that should be showing up in your display, and there should be a little space on there that says Q&A. Once you hit that, the Q&A box should open. Likewise, there's also one for chatting and one for closed captioning, which I now realize I forgot to send the link to the person doing the closed captioning, so I will do that in a second as soon as I hand off to, who am I handing off to? Dan. I'm handing off to Dan in a second. If you have any questions, you can chat with me in the box. Hopefully everyone can hear me and has the handouts. During the presentation, the analyst who is not currently presenting will attempt to type answers to the questions in the box. If you look at the Q&A box, there should be tabs for open questions, answered questions, and dismissed questions. You should be able to see all that so you can see the questions. I also can send a copy of that file after the presentation to anyone who would like to see it. I guess that covers everything I need to cover. I'm going to now turn the presentation over to Dan. Dan?
Good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar where we will be discussing the 2019 report year changes. In this presentation, we will review all changes and clarifications that agencies will encounter from the last report year to the 2019 report year and is geared towards all system reporters. This afternoon, we will touch base on the reporting eligibility updates and clarifications, the APC data collection method and how this change affects the CEO certification D10 form. We will discuss asset module updates for all operators, as well as asset module updates for rail operators. Your presenters today are myself, Kyle Fritz, and my colleague, Daniel Barnes. We are part of a team of 13 validation analysts who validate and close out NTD reports for close to 1,000 agencies. If you have any questions after we wrap up the webinar, please do not hesitate to contact us or your agency's analyst for assistance. Here you will see the contact information for the NTD Deputy Program Manager, Murtaza Naqvi, and for the NTD Operations Center Manager, Joe Eldridge, should you wish to contact them after the webinar. Joe will also be answering questions at the end of the webinar. The first topic we will be discussing today is service eligibility, and we will be providing clarification on commuter service, disaster service, and bus bridge service. FTA has updated their survey criteria for commuter service eligibility in NTD reporting. Currently, for a commuter service to be reported, at least 50% of passengers must make a same-day return trip across all service runs for 1 year. Agencies with new commuter services, where the one-way trip time exceeds 90 minutes, must complete a survey to demonstrate that 50% of passengers make a same-day return trip. Agencies are not required to survey every passenger, but may conduct a sample survey. Any survey must cover a 12-month period and be conducted over the entire length of each route. Agencies may consider a passenger as having made a complete round trip, even if the return trip is met by a separate means. For the purposes of reporting a return trip, a passenger making a single round trip in a given day cannot be surveyed twice for inclusion in the final calculation. The calculation establishing whether 50% of riders make a same-day return trip must be calculated as total unique passengers making a same-day return trip divided by the sum of total unique passengers making a same-day return trip plus total unique passengers making an overnight trip. A qualified statistician must approve the survey methodology, the sample size, the sampling methodology, and certify that the results give the required level of confidence. After the survey is completed, you should send the result to your assigned analyst who will submit the finding within FTA for approval. If FTA determines that this service does not meet the eligibility for commuter service, it will be deemed intercity bus and will not be reportable to the NTD. FTA's focus will be on applying this standard to new and old agencies as circumstances apply. FTA has clarified their position on the eligibility of evacuation or disaster services. FTA does not consider transportation services in direct response to a natural disaster or evacuations as public transit, as these services are not regular and continuing. Service and financial data for these services should be excluded from an agency's NTD report. When an agency with a reported mode provides substitute service for another mode, agencies should report this service and financial data under the mode providing the service. Oftentimes, these services are called temporary bus bridges, as larger agencies use buses to provide service between rail stations in the event of interrupted service for maintenance. Agencies with temporary bus bridges are not required to report the service on their NTD report. However, an agency may choose to add the mode or type of service to the report in order to receive credit in the FTA formula apportionment program. An example would be a rail agency with a fixed route bus bridge between two train stations. They may not report the service under the rail mode, but must instead report the service as bus. Transportation network companies, also known as TNCs, are entities that use digital networks to connect riders to a driver affiliated with that entity in order for the driver to transport the rider using a vehicle owned, leased, or otherwise authorized for use by the driver to a point chosen by the rider. These services are now reportable to the National Transit Database if the services meet the definition of public transportation. This means the service must be regular and continuing, as well as shared ride. Regular and continuing refers to service that operates on schedule during specified times and days with the expectation that the service will operate indefinitely. Shared ride refers to the grouping of passengers where neither the driver of the vehicle nor the passenger can decline additional passengers when there is room for them. Not all trips require having a shared ride, but an attempt must be made. Additionally, when a ride is being grouped, room permitting, the trip cannot exclude dependents of the passengers. Many agencies have begun providing TNC service. However, if these are limited time pilot programs, they are not considered regular and continuing and must be excluded from the report. Examples of TNCs could include transit agencies who contract a ride-hailing service to help offset parking demand at their more heavily used passenger stations, or a transit agency contracts a ride-hailing service to provide on-demand service to its paratransit riders. 2019 Policy Manual includes additional examples and information for these services and can be found in Appendix E. Now let's talk about automated passenger counters, APCs, and how agencies must now demonstrate which modes use APCs on the D10 form. With the increased use of APCs for collecting unlinked passenger trip and passenger miles traveled data, FTA will now require that agencies identify which modes and types of service are reported using APC data. Agencies are only required to indicate this on the D10 form if they are using APCs to collect and report data for the entity reporting purposes. This slide illustrates where agencies will indicate the use of APCs for collecting passenger miles traveled data. For each mode and type of service, agencies will have a column labeled Used APC Data. For each applicable mode and type of service, the agency should select the checkbox to indicate their use of APCs for that mode. If an agency uses APCs and collects all available data, which was then scaled up using a statistically valid method, they should select option E, use all available APC data. For agencies using a combination of APCs and sampling materials, they should select option B, alternative sampling procedure. This slide illustrates where agencies will indicate their use of APCs for collecting unlinked passenger trip data. Similarly to passenger miles traveled slide, for each mode and type of service, agencies will have a column labeled Used APC Data. For each applicable mode and type of service, the agency should select the checkbox to indicate their use of APCs for collecting unlinked passenger trips. If an agency uses APCs and collects all available data, which was then scaled up using a statistically valid method, they should select option D, use all available APC data. For agencies using a combination of APCs and sampling materials, they should select option B, alternative sampling procedure. I'll now turn it over to Daniel Barnes, who will go over the changes to the asset module.
Report year 2018 was the first year all agencies were required to report asset data. The remainder of this webinar will highlight the changes to the 2019 forms. Beginning in report year 2019, agencies are required to upload a narrative report to the NTD that outlines performance targets and their progress towards their targets. This narrative may include any changes in transit system conditions that may affect progress towards those targets. There have been some minor updates to station criteria on the A10 and A15 forms. FTA has clarified that passenger stations no longer need to be enclosed buildings, rather a significant structure. This station criteria applies to all facilities reported on both A10 and A15 forms. An example of a non-enclosed structure that is reportable would be a rail platform in its own separate right-of-way, which functions like a passenger station but may only contain a canopy for cover. Please note that simple transit shelters are still not reportable. Descriptions of transit asset facility types on the A15 form have been updated in the 2019 policy manual for clarity. Early during the 2018 report year, there were system constraints that did not allow agencies to report a condition assessment date after the end of the fiscal year. However, FTA has clarified that agencies may report condition assessments for a facility that occurred after the agency's fiscal year end date, but before the annual reporting deadline. So, for example, an October reporter can report a condition assessment date after the June 30th fiscal year end date, as long as the assessment date is before the annual reporting deadline. Please note, agencies should continue to report condition assessments made before their fiscal year end date for a given report as applicable. On the A15 form, FTA has clarified that agencies must report all passenger facilities used in revenue service, regardless of capital responsibility. Passenger facilities include both passenger stations and passenger parking facilities. These definitions can be found in the 2019 policy manual. Also on the A15 form, FTA has clarified that agencies must report all passenger facilities used in revenue. Also on the A15 form, FTA has clarified that for at-grade facilities, agencies with platforms should include the square footage of that platform into the calculation for total square footage of the facility. You will report this under the square footage data field. Late in 2018, a new passenger facility type field was created on the A15 form titled Ferryboat Terminal. This facility type also includes docks. Agencies operating ferryboat services should check the facility types to ensure ferryboat terminal is properly selected. Agencies should not report administrative and maintenance facilities on the A10 and A15 forms if they are incidentally used for transit operations. FTA has clarified that a facility is considered incidental when 50% or less of the facility's physical space is dedicated to the use of public transportation services. For maintenance facilities, agencies may use the total number of vehicles served in that facility to determine if it meets the qualifications of incidental use. An example of incidental use would be when a county maintenance building where the local police, fire department, Department of Public Works, and local transit all have vehicles maintained there. Since the local transit is just a minor piece of the entire operation in the municipal building, it is therefore considered incidental, which is not reportable. FTA has clarified that agencies are not required to report a condition assessment for facilities that are under construction. Once the construction of the facility has been completed, agencies will again be required to include a condition assessment. Agencies should still inventory facilities under construction on the 815 form. Types of last renewal. FTA has eliminated the renewal type for the mid-life powertrain. Mid-life vehicle overhauls and life-extending rebuilds are still reported on the 830 form. If you are extending the life of a vehicle, the end of its life should be reported here. Please note, in order for you to report an overhaul or rebuild, it must be completed during that year's reporting year. The future is now. FTA has added a vehicle type for autonomous vehicle fleets. Autonomous vehicles are those that are capable of performing all driving functions without human input under certain conditions. The vehicle must be able to completely operate without any human input or monitoring while vehicle is in operation. This does not apply to 99% of agencies. If this does not apply to you, leave it blank. Here you will see the basic information section of the 830 form has had a facelift and now looks different from the prior year. However, the functionality remains largely unchanged, but a few additional fields have been added, which we will address shortly. FTA now requires on the 835 form that agencies with non-dedicated service vehicles report a representative sample of those vehicles and include them on the form. This is similar to how FTA has agencies report non-dedicated revenue vehicles on the 830 form. FTA has clarified that the intent of the estimated cost field on the 835 is to capture the cost of a comparable fleet. A reasonable estimate of estimated costs will reflect the current asset type, allowing for moderate increases in cost due to inflation or improvements in technology. The estimated cost should exclude any planning costs for procuring the vehicles. FTA has clarified the definition for service vehicles. Service vehicles must now be self-propelled and roadworthy or otherwise a major piece of construction equipment in order to be reportable. What are not service vehicles? Vehicles such as golf carts and flatbeds. You can review the 2019 policy manual for additional examples. Now we will turn to the asset forms that pertain only to the rail modes. This first slide describes the changes in reporting safety equipment for rail vehicles. You are now required to report the number of fleet vehicles with event data recorders, emergency lighting system design, emergency signage, and low location emergency path marking based on APTA and IEEE standards. These new data points are mandatory for all rail agencies. When filling out the 830 form, it is recommended to export data, fill out the file, then import the data back all at once. On the 820 form, agencies were previously able to report guideway using either linear miles or track miles. In Report Year 2019, all agencies are required to report guideway based on track miles. If an agency is unable to convert their linear miles into track miles, they are encouraged to reach out to their analysts and should submit a data waiver for Report Year 2019. FTA has made a few changes on how rail agencies will report special track work elements for this report year. FTA has removed the half-grand union option from the 820 form. Grand unions and half-grand unions should be reported accordingly to their components. FTA has now added 3 special track work data elements to better fit industry terms, which are slip switch, rail crossing, and lapped turnout. FTA has also provided definitions for each special track work assets on the A20 form, which are located in the 2019 NTD policy manual. This slide just illustrates the changes in reporting for special track elements. The three new track elements are element 22, lapped turnout, element 24, rail crossings, and element 25, slip switch. On the A20 form, agencies must report the construction period of guideway elements. If the period of construction stems over multiple decades, you should determine a reasonable split between the two decades. If no reasonable basis can be determined, the age group should be updated to reflect the end date of construction. Lastly, FTA has clarified that power and signal substations, which are several units or buildings, in close proximity of each other that perform the same function, should be reported as a single substation on the A20 form. An example would be a rail agency that has several small buildings located at a power station which directs power to the train. Since these structures all serve in providing the energy to the train, they are considered part of the same substation. That concludes the 2019 Report Your Changes webinar. Does anyone have any further questions? If you do, please type it into the Q&A box as you see on the screen.
The questions that have not been answered yet. Wesley wants to know, how can an asset have no capital involvement? Can you please provide examples? Thank you.
Sure. So the question is about, I think, capital replacement responsibility or capital responsibility. So typically that means there's some form of ownership or responsibility to upkeep and maintain the asset. In some cases, assets are leased from a third party in an agreement where there's kind of no stipulation for maintaining the asset. It could also be that the agency just outright does not own the facility or asset. Maybe it's used kind of in kind. In those cases, you would report either no capital replacement responsibility, or in some cases it would just be left off the report, depending on what form or requirement we're talking about. Hopefully that answers it.
Great. The next question is from N66FJB. It says, with the changes to the forms, will data still be able to be uploaded via the Excel templates currently on the TRAMS NTD site? Thanks.
That's a good question. With the A15, A20, A35 form, the answer is yes, but with the A30 form, for best results, you'll probably want to use the form in the system as it's been modified to show the new fields. And in general, that's a good idea to download the templates or export the templates directly from the reporting form that you're looking at. That'll just make it easier for you to re-import once you've filled out all the data.
Great. Next is from Richard. Oh, sorry. Richard and everyone, I am recording this. Hopefully I can edit out all the ridiculous things that I say. And it will be posted on NTI's YouTube page, I would say maybe in a week or so. I have to get the transcript and the closed captions set before I post it, so that's the only holdup. So you will be able to view it again. Does anybody else have any questions? Kyle and Dan, did we put your contact information in case anyone, oh wait, there's a question. It says, this is from CCAPKXL. When we export the forms into Excel, are they password protected? I guess that should say.
I think the person is reporting that the export from the system gives them a password protected Excel file to use, which I don't think is expected. So you might want to contact the analyst that your agency is working with to try and troubleshoot what's going on there. And if it is a software issue, we'll investigate that.
Great. So I think I was asking if there was an email address in case anyone had, oh, sorry. You guys have to type faster. Dave wants to know if an agency uses method E and having the method certified by a qualified statistician for PMT from APC data, can it report the results as 100% counts?
That's a good question. The point of method E is that most APC or agencies using APCs aren't actually collecting a 100% count, but are scaling up based on some statistically valid method. 100% count should be reserved for mostly for agencies using fare boxes or some other method to actually collect 98% or higher count of their ridership. Agencies who are using APCs needed a way to kind of show that they're using APCs to scale up. They're using an APC software to scale up rather than using APCs in combination with some other NTD sampling method. So if you're using both, you're still using some sampling method, you should report B. If you're just using APC software, you should report method E. Hopefully that answers the question.
Anyone else? So I keep starting to say, if they have any, oh, there you go. That's exactly what I wanted to say. So if you don't get your question in time, email the NTD Help Desk. The address is on the screen and is also in the handouts, which you should have received a link for. It's also in the chat box a couple of times. I guess that's it. Anything else any of you gentlemen would like to add?
Yeah. No, I think we're all set on our end. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. And again, if you do happen to have any questions, feel free to reach out to Kyle or myself, whose information is on slide 4, or contact the NTD Help Desk at 1-888-252-0936 or at ntdhelp@dot.gov. Appreciate everyone joining us today and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Great, thanks. And just as a reminder, before we go, you will be getting an evaluation for this event in an email. So if you could just take a few minutes and fill that out, we really would appreciate your feedback. And if you missed any part of this, check the NTI YouTube page, which you can find the link for in the top right corner of our homepage. It's probably easier to do that than reading the whole long link. Or email me and I'll help you out. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Bye.